I think we should take a break, Margaret said softly, not looking me in the eye. I blinked once, just once, but that was enough for her to twist the knife. Not a breakup, just space, you know, she added quickly, like that softened the blow. We had been together for 5 years, engaged for 6 months. I had just finalized the down payment for our future house, her dream, not mine. A break? Margaret didn't cry, didn't tremble, just stared at her half-eaten salad like she was discussing the weather. So I matched her tone. Cool, how long of a break are you thinking? She shrugged. A week, maybe more? Maybe more. I stood up, kissed her forehead, said, text me when you're done deciding, and walked out. That night, I went to her sister's apartment, Melissa, the one who was never allowed to be alone with me. I knocked, she opened the door and froze when she saw me. Robert? I held up the ring box. Your sister said she wants space, do you want her space? She stared at the ring, then at me. You're not serious. I smiled, dead serious. 2 days, marry me. She didn't laugh, she didn't flinch. Melissa's eyes burned. You'll never be able to undo this. I nodded. That's the point. 2 hours later, she packed a suitcase. 24 hours later, we were at City Hall. 48 hours later, I posted the wedding photo. Margaret's reaction came 10 minutes after that. The message was simple. What the hell did you do? I didn't reply, I just changed the profile picture to the one where Melissa kissed my cheek while holding the marriage certificate. Margaret didn't ask why, didn't ask how. But Daniel did. Daniel, the best man I never chose. The friend who spent more time with my fiancée than I did. He sent a voice note, half laughing, half panicked. Bro, tell me this is fake, tell me you're not this unhinged. I played it twice, then deleted it. Because he had no idea. No one did, not yet. I didn't marry Melissa to get over Margaret. I married her because 2 days ago, I caught Margaret holding hands with Daniel at a bar 20 minutes outside the city. They didn't see me. They were laughing, drinking, sharing a single dessert. Margaret always said she hated sweets. Melissa once told me, Margaret lies a lot. I didn't believe her then. But now? Now I was lying in the same bed with her. My wife, Margaret's sister. Melissa pulled the covers over herself and turned to me. She's going to burn everything down. I nodded. Let her try. And with that, I closed my eyes, hand still clutching the ring box I never gave Margaret. The same one Melissa wore now like a crown. When I first met Margaret, I was fresh out of grad school, carrying debt, ambition, and not much else. She, on the other hand, had already been wrapped in the illusion of perfection since birth, graceful, poised, untouched by hardship. The kind of woman who walked into a room and made you forget what you were doing. The kind of woman who, when she smiled at you, made you feel like you'd been chosen by the gods. Margaret didn't fall in love, she selected. And somehow, I was the one she picked. Back then, I didn't question it. I was just a guy with a half-decent jawline, a solid job offer, and a dangerous need to prove I was enough for someone like her. She worked in PR, fluent in image, perception, spin. Our first date wasn't dinner, it was a charity gala I didn't belong at. She slid a tailored suit over my frame and whispered, "You look expensive," like it was a compliment. It was never about charm with Margaret, it was about how well you fit the vision. I became her vision. I learned to stand at the right angles in photos, to answer questions with a confident laugh, to wear cologne that didn't overpower hers. Her friends called us goals. Her parents called me reliable. But never once did they call me his own person. I didn't mind at first. When you love someone like Margaret, you learn to love the way she needs to be loved. You play the part. The proposal happened exactly how she would have scripted it. It was her birthday, a private rooftop, a catered dinner, fairy lights strung across the skyline like stars made for her alone. She said yes before I finished kneeling. The applause from the servers echoed into the night. But later, while everyone toasted, I noticed her looking out over the city, not at me. Like something was missing. Or maybe, like someone else should have been holding the ring. That thought stayed in the back of my head like an echo I refused to chase. Melissa, her younger sister, was the opposite of her in every way. Wild curls instead of perfect waves, canvas shoes instead of heels. She didn't just speak, she argued, questioned, peeled back everything people wanted to hide. At family gatherings, she'd show up 10 minutes late and 3 shades louder than the room allowed. Margaret called her a mess, I called her honest. Melissa and I were never supposed to be close. From day one, Margaret drew that line. She's not like us. But the thing is, I wasn't like us either, I just played along better. We first talked alone on the balcony during one of Margaret's wine tastings. I was trying to escape the endless swirl of fake compliments and empty glasses. Melissa lit a cigarette and offered me one. I don't smoke, I said. She raised an eyebrow. Didn't ask. That made me laugh. I learned she worked freelance, mostly graphic design and photography. Margaret said it was her phase, but her work had soul. She had soul. And even though I never crossed any lines, every time Melissa walked into a room, something shifted, like I remembered who I was before I became Margaret's accessory. Still, I never let myself look too long, not until I had to. That night at the bar, 2 days before our break, I saw them. Margaret and Daniel. His hand resting on her lower back, her head tilted, laughing at something he said. Close, too close. I wasn't supposed to be there. I had taken the wrong exit after a long drive home from a work conference, but fate has a funny way of slapping truth in your face when you least want it. I didn't confront them, I watched. 10 minutes, 1 drink, 1 dessert with 2 spoons. I drove home and sat in my car for an hour before going inside. Margaret came home late, said she had a migraine and needed to rest. She didn't know I knew. The next day, she asked for space. A break. And that's when I knew. I wasn't her priority, I wasn't her safe place. I was a placeholder. That night, I walked over to Melissa's apartment and she opened the door like she had been waiting for me her whole life. Maybe she had. Why now? She asked. Because now I don't feel guilty. She didn't smile. You should still feel angry. I did. But it wasn't the rage that made me propose, it was clarity. For 5 years, I had fought to be enough for someone who was never really looking at me, and in one moment, I decided I'd rather build a life with the one person who never asked me to pretend, Melissa. Melissa didn't wear white, she wore black with red lipstick and combat boots. We signed the paper, no guests, no flowers, no lies. She held my hand like it belonged there. I posted the photo because I wanted Margaret to see it, I needed her to see it. The comments exploded, some were confused, some were furious, some assumed it was fake. Daniel messaged me 5 times. The 6th was a voice note, sounding like a guy watching his house burn with no insurance. Robert, dude, this is not the move, you're spiraling, what are you trying to prove? I didn't respond, because I wasn't trying to prove anything. I was finally done proving. Margaret didn't reach out until hours later. Her message was only 5 words. What the hell is this? I replied with the wedding photo. The one where Melissa's hand rested on my chest, and my face wore a smile no one had ever seen before. And then I turned my phone off. I didn't want to read the storm, I had lived inside one long enough. Melissa made grilled cheese that night. We sat on her floor, legs crossed, watching old movies like we were kids hiding from the world. She didn't ask if I still loved Margaret. She didn't need to. She knew the answer was too complicated for words and too simple for denial. Instead, she kissed me, gently, and whispered, "Let her burn, I'm not afraid of fire." So neither was I. But the thing about Margaret? She wasn't the kind to burn, she was the kind who turned flames into strategy, and what came next would prove it. 3 days after the wedding, I woke up to the sound of glass breaking. Melissa had dropped a mug. She stood frozen in the kitchen, barefoot, staring at her phone. Her lips were parted slightly, eyes wide in disbelief. "Melissa?" I asked, stepping forward. She looked up slowly, like she hadn't realized I was in the room. "She posted it." My stomach tightened. "Posted what?" She turned the screen toward me. Margaret's Instagram. Her account, usually flooded with curated brunches and designer perfumes, now featured a single blurry photo. A close-up of her hand over mine from a year ago, our engagement dinner. The caption read, "Some people say love fades, others prove it never existed." I guess I found out which one it was. Thanks for teaching me the difference, Robert. The comments were vicious. What a dog. Married her sister? You're better off without him, Queen. She upgraded, he downgraded. Is this real? Did he actually marry Melissa? Melissa snatched the phone back and threw it on the couch. She's playing victim. I nodded, jaw clenched. That's what she does best. But it wasn't just the post. Within the hour, my inbox was flooded. Old friends, colleagues, even my boss. Hey Robert, saw what's going on online. Everything all right? Melissa's phone buzzed next, and kept buzzing. Her cousin, her clients, even an old college roommate. She's dragging us both, Melissa muttered, and no one's asking what she did, just what we did. That was Margaret's magic. She didn't scream, she didn't throw tantrums, she told half-truths in velvet, wrapped betrayal in perfume, and made you the villain in your own story. By noon, Daniel showed up. Melissa didn't want to let him in, I did. He stepped inside like he was walking into a courtroom, hands in pockets, fake casual. Just here to talk, he said, not looking for a fight. You found one anyway, Melissa shot back. I raised a hand. What do you want? He glanced at Melissa, then back at me. She's spiraling, man. Margaret, you humiliated her. I laughed bitterly. Oh, and what about her humiliating me? Want to talk about that dinner date you two had? He froze. Melissa's eyes narrowed. You're joking, she said. Daniel's mouth opened, then shut, then opened again. It wasn't like that. You were sharing dessert, I said, holding her waist. You looked like a couple. He stepped forward. She was drunk, sad, I was being a friend. Melissa scoffed. You don't touch your friend like that unless you want to be more. He glanced at her sharply. You wouldn't understand. I understand betrayal just fine. Daniel exhaled heavily. I didn't come here to be ganged up on. I came to ask, why the hell did you marry her sister? 2 days, Robert, 2? I met his gaze without blinking. Because I was tired of waiting for someone to value me. He didn't respond to that. Instead, he turned to leave, but right before he stepped out, he said, you know she's not going to stop, right? Margaret doesn't lose. That night, Melissa and I barely slept, not because we regretted anything, but because we knew war had been declared. The next morning, a tabloid article went live. PR queen dumped for her own sister, industry friends shocked at secret elopement drama. The article included quotes from close sources and a friend of the family, all of them clearly coached by Margaret's hand. I read each one slowly. He always felt like he wasn't good enough for her. Robert was never comfortable in the spotlight. Melissa's chaos suits him more. Honestly, this must be some kind of midlife meltdown. Melissa laughed, reading that last line. You're 30. They make it sound like I married my cousin in a barn. A second article dropped the next day. This one painted Melissa as the homewrecker. Rebel sister or ruthless opportunist. How Melissa Wang stole her sister's fiancé. She didn't laugh at that one. She shut her laptop and sat in silence. You okay? I asked. She nodded. I knew this would happen. I just didn't think it would sting like this. I can handle it, I said. That's not what I'm worried about, she whispered. That night, I dreamed of Margaret. She was standing in the house we never moved into, wearing the same dress she wore when I proposed. She held the ring box in one hand, but when she opened it, it was empty. Her eyes met mine, not angry, not hurt, just vacant. You should have waited, she whispered. I woke up in a cold sweat. Melissa was already up, standing at the window. She held a steaming mug of tea, staring at something outside. She's here, she said. I sat up. Who? Margaret. I pulled on a hoodie and stepped toward the window. Sure enough, there she was, standing by her car, sunglasses on, designer trench coat, one hand resting on the roof like she owned the sidewalk. She wants you to come out, Melissa said. I know. Don't. I have to. Margaret didn't speak until I was standing 2 feet away. You made me look like a joke, she said. You made me feel like one for 5 years. She removed her sunglasses. Her eyes were dry, cold. You think this is over? I raised a brow. I think it just started. She nodded slowly. I loved you, Robert. Then you should have said that before Daniel. She stepped closer. You still love me. I used to. You still do. I smiled sadly. You're good at rewriting stories, Margaret, but you can't rewrite mine anymore. She blinked. Just once, but for her, that was the equivalent of a scream. Then I guess we both know what happens next, she whispered. I nodded. Yeah, we do. She turned to leave but stopped beside her car. Melissa always wanted what I had, she said. Now she does. But you'll learn the hard way that she's not me. I didn't reply. Because I wasn't afraid of Melissa turning into Margaret. I was afraid of Margaret turning the world against us before Melissa ever got a chance to prove who she really was. That afternoon, a court summons arrived. Margaret was suing me. For emotional damages, defamation, breach of engagement contract. Melissa read the letter out loud, and then, without a word, walked to the kitchen, opened the freezer, and pulled out the emergency ice cream tub. I told you she'd burn everything. I joined her on the floor and took the spoon she offered. She's not going to stop, I said. Nope. Do you regret this? She shook her head. I regret not saying yes sooner. We ate in silence, the lawsuit letter between us on the counter. That night, Melissa leaned into me and whispered, whatever comes next, we fight it together, right? I looked into her eyes. They didn't sparkle like Margaret's. They didn't dazzle or hypnotize, but they were real. They were grounded. They were mine. Right, I said. But deep down, I knew this wasn't just about a broken engagement anymore. It was about reputations, about revenge, about power. And Margaret was just getting started. I thought I had already grieved Margaret. The night I walked out after she said, let's take a break, I told myself that was the end, that whatever pain still lingered would burn out fast and clean like a paper flame. I thought marrying Melissa was the match that would incinerate everything she left behind. But I was wrong. Grief doesn't move in a straight line, it's a loop, a cruel one, and mine was tightening around my throat. I sat alone in our new apartment, the one Melissa and I chose after the courthouse wedding, staring at the engagement ring I once picked for Margaret. Melissa had tucked it into the bottom drawer when she moved in, out of sight, but never far. I found it while looking for some old tax forms, and now it sat in my hand, mocking me with its silence. I remembered the day I bought it. I'd gone to 3 stores, rejected 7 options, called her best friend in a panic, asking which metal she preferred. I had practiced the proposal 3 times in the mirror. She said yes before I even finished kneeling. Now that same ring was just weight. Cold, dumb weight. Melissa walked in and caught me holding it. She didn't say a word, just looked at me. For a long time. I placed it on the table and stood. It's not what you think. She nodded once. It never is. The worst part wasn't that Margaret had filed a lawsuit, it was that the world believed her. That every headline spun her side of the story like gospel truth. That strangers who'd never met me now saw me as a traitor, a villain, a backstabbing husband who abandoned his fiancée and seduced her little sister. The comments weren't just cruel, they were personal. He never deserved Margaret. Melissa always wanted to be her. She just got there first. 2 snakes found each other. Let them rot. I tried ignoring them, I tried deleting my apps, I tried pretending I didn't care. But when your reputation becomes meza hashtag, it's impossible to stay untouched. I couldn't go to work without whispers, I couldn't answer my phone without someone asking, is it true? My own father sent me a text that just said, disappointed. Nothing more, nothing less. The weight was crushing. And Melissa, God, Melissa, she carried it in silence. She didn't cry, didn't rant, she just became smaller, quieter. Every time she scrolled and saw another lie, I saw a piece of her retreat inward, her colors dimmed, her laugh disappeared. One night, I came home and found her in the closet, not hiding, just sitting there, knees tucked, eyes blank. You okay? I asked. She blinked slowly. Do you think I ruined you? I knelt beside her. What? Do you think, if I hadn't said yes, none of this would have happened? I cupped her face. If you hadn't said yes, I would have lost both of you. At least now I have one thing that's real. She nodded, but I could tell she didn't believe me. That night, she didn't sleep, Neither did I. My mind kept replaying old memories of Margaret, the early ones, before the facades, when she'd call me from work just to ask what I had for lunch, when we danced barefoot in my old apartment because the power went out. When she whispered, "I feel safest with you." I wondered if she ever meant it, or if she just said it because it fit her narrative. And then I wondered something worse. What if I was the one who broke her? What if, in chasing Melissa, I proved everything she feared about men and love and loyalty? What if I had become the very villain I thought she was? I didn't have answers, just noise. And it got louder with every new article, every trending hashtag, every glance I caught from people in public who clearly recognized me. The lawsuit became a media circus. Margaret's lawyer claimed emotional distress, loss of future income, defamation of character. They attached screenshots of my wedding post, claimed it was malicious and targeted, claimed we'd planned it all while still engaged. We submitted our own counter-evidence, but it didn't matter. Margaret had the crowd, she had the face, the voice, the years of credibility. All I had was the truth, and no one wanted to hear it. One morning, I opened the mail and found a court hearing notice. Margaret's team was pushing for a temporary restraining order, citing mental anguish triggered by proximity. I hadn't even seen her since that day outside the apartment, but apparently, the internet counted. I tossed the letter on the table and laughed, a bitter, dry sound. Melissa asked, "What now?" "I'm the danger to her now," I said. She blinked. "She cheated on you." "I know. She said she needed space, and in that space, you watched her lie in someone else's arms." "I know. And now she's telling the world you broke her?" "I know, Melissa!" My voice shattered in the room like a dropped mirror. Silence followed. Melissa stood frozen, her eyes shimmering, but not in anger, in fear. I closed my eyes, regret flooded my chest. "I didn't mean to shout," I whispered. She nodded. "I know." We didn't talk much after that, not that night, not the next morning, and for the first time since our marriage, I feared I might lose her too, not because she'd leave, but because she'd slip into that quiet, lonely space I couldn't reach. The worst betrayal isn't loud, it's subtle. It's when someone you gave your future to rewrites your past, when they reshape who you are in the eyes of the world. Margaret didn't just break my heart, she erased my side of the story, painted over my memories with her version, and dared me to correct her. But I couldn't fight fire with fire. That's who she was. That's how she won. I had to be different. I had to find another way. But even then, the guilt stayed. The doubts grew. Was I a coward for not defending myself louder, a fool for letting love blind me for so long? Was marrying Melissa an act of liberation or retaliation? Every night, I stared at the ceiling, drowning in questions I couldn't voice. And beside me, Melissa curled up smaller and smaller, like someone bracing for impact. The emotional war wasn't just with Margaret, it was inside me. Every version of myself, the man I was with Margaret, the man I tried to become, the man I pretended to be, was fighting for survival. And all I could do was wait. Wait for court. Wait for the truth. Wait for the moment I either burned with Margaret or finally buried her hold over me for good. It was a Thursday afternoon when the second blow landed. Melissa had gone out for groceries. I was home alone, scrolling through legal documents, trying to find a gap, any crack we could push back through, when my phone buzzed with a notification. Margaret Wang live. Setting the record straight. I stared at the screen for a long moment. My instinct was to ignore it, but something in the pit of my stomach told me to watch. The moment I opened the stream, I knew it wasn't just another PR stunt. Margaret sat in a softly lit room, no makeup, hair loosely tied back, a white sweater fell off one shoulder, her eyes were red. "Hi everyone," she began. "This isn't easy for me, but I've stayed silent long enough." Her voice cracked, a tear slid down her cheek. "I've been trying to heal, trying to understand how someone I loved so deeply could humiliate me so publicly, and the truth is, there's no understanding it." The comments were already flooding. "We love you, Margaret. Take your time, Queen, you're so strong. He doesn't deserve you. Tell us everything, we believe you." Margaret inhaled sharply. "There are things I didn't want to share, because they're personal, but if I stay quiet, the lies become the truth." She pulled out her phone and held it up to the camera. I'm going to read a message, a text I received, from my own sister. She tapped the screen and her voice began to tremble. You always take what you don't deserve, Margaret. This time, I'm taking something back. You never really loved him, not the way I do. The chat exploded. Oh my God. She stole him on purpose? How evil can you be to do this to your own sister? Melissa is cancelled. Margaret wiped her eyes. That message broke me, not because it was cruel, but because it was true. She leaned forward. I never stopped loving Robert. I was confused, I was scared, but I never wanted space because... See, I stopped caring. I wanted space because I thought I was the problem. Her voice dropped to a whisper. But I didn't deserve to be replaced, not by my sister, not in 2 days. Then, the final dagger. I've just submitted new evidence to my legal team, including proof of the emotional manipulation I went through, including messages Melissa sent me years ago, about Robert. She didn't say what those messages were. She didn't need to. The implication was enough. I closed the stream. My hands were shaking. Melissa returned minutes later. The second she stepped inside, I saw the panic in her eyes. You saw it, she whispered. I nodded. She dropped the grocery bag and sank onto the floor. That message, it's real. I wrote it, the night she broke the engagement. You said she asked for a break. She did, but I found out later she never meant it. She was testing him, us. I sat down beside her. Melissa, I didn't plan to fall for you, Robert. I swear on everything I have. I buried it for years. I dated other people. I moved cities. But that night, when she told me she let you go, I snapped. I closed my eyes. The pain was different now. It wasn't betrayal. It was confusion, the kind that seeps into your bones and makes you question what's real. You never told me, I said softly. She looked at me, eyes full of regret, because I knew you'd think this was revenge, or strategy, but it wasn't. It was the first honest thing I ever did. The truth was ugly. Not because it made her wrong, but because it made her real, and real people come with scars. The media devoured the live stream. By evening, Margaret was trending on every platform. Hashtags like, #SisterStealer and #Shiraz, Margaret deserves, better took over. I received a call from my office. They asked me to take a few weeks off. Melissa lost 2 freelance clients. We became walking scandals. The next day, Margaret's legal team filed an emergency motion to freeze joint assets I never even touched. They claimed emotional sabotage. They accused Melissa of long-term psychological targeting. They painted her as a jealous sister with a hidden agenda. And for the first time, it was working. The public turned, not just on her, on us. We became memes. When your sister says she's fine and then marries your fiancé. Robert really said till death do us part and skipped straight to her sister. This whole family needs therapy and jail. Melissa didn't leave the apartment for 2 days. She stayed curled under a blanket, scrolling in silence, absorbing every word like it was carved into her skin. On the 3rd night, I found her standing at the bathroom sink, gripping the counter. I think I ruined your life, she said. I wrapped my arms around her from behind. No, you just made it visible. She trembled. If you want to walk away, now's the time. I turned her gently to face me. Margaret gave me confusion. You gave me clarity. I'm not walking. She started crying, not soft, cinematic tears. Real ones. Gut-wrenching, breath-stealing sobs that cracked something inside me too. Because love isn't just about comfort, it's about choosing someone even when it's hell to stand beside them. But still. The next morning, I did something she didn't expect. I called Margaret. She answered on the first ring. You ready to apologize? No, I said, I'm ready to end this. She laughed. End what? Your public image? Your career? I'll sign whatever settlement you want. I'll even issue a public statement if it'll shut this down, but leave Melissa out of it. She's not the villain you're painting. There was silence, then. You really love her? I do. Another beat. Then you better be ready to lose everything for her. I already have, and I'm still here. She hung up. An hour later, a revised court filing landed in our inbox. The damages were reduced. The claims against Melissa dropped, the restraining order request was withdrawn. Melissa stared at the screen in disbelief. Why would she? I pulled her into my chest. Because she finally saw that no amount of revenge would change the truth. But the world wasn't done. Because right as we exhaled, just when it seemed the storm might pass, Daniel posted a cryptic tweet. Sometimes, the wrong man marries the right sister. Let's talk. The comments lit up instantly. And I realized Margaret wasn't the only one with a grudge. And we were far from the end. Daniel's tweet detonated like a timed grenade. Sometimes the wrong man marries the right sister. Let's talk. That single line fractured whatever fragile progress Melissa and I had made. Within 20 minutes, gossip channels started spinning theories. Some said Daniel was finally going to expose the real story behind the triangle. Others speculated he had proof Margaret and I were never really broken up, making the marriage to Melissa illegal. Some even suggested Melissa and I had conspired all along to trap Margaret in a scandal. By the time we finished reading the third article, Melissa was shaking. "Why now?" she whispered, curled on the far end of the couch, knees drawn up. "Because Margaret failed," I said quietly, "and now she needs someone else to carry the torch." Melissa looked at me, dark circles haunting her eyes. "But Daniel? He was your best man, he was supposed to be your best friend." I sighed. He was supposed to be a lot of things. The next morning, Daniel went live. He didn't sit in a dim room like Margaret. No, he chose the rooftop bar where I once celebrated my promotion, with both of them. Subtle, petty, calculated. He wore sunglasses, a smug smile, and that signature too casual hoodie that said, "I'm just being honest." "Hey guys," he said, waving to the camera. "Didn't expect this kind of attention, but since y'all are here, let's clear some things up." The comments exploded immediately. Finally someone with answers. Team Daniel all the way. Expose the snakes. He leaned in, dramatic pause. "First things first, Robert and I were brothers, not by blood, but by everything else. College, career, weekends, secrets. I was there when he met Margaret, I was there when he proposed, I was there when she cried on my shoulder after the breakup." He took off his sunglasses, setting them carefully beside him. "What you don't know is, I was also there, what?" And Robert started looking at Melissa. Melissa froze beside me. I felt her fingers twitch. Daniel continued, "I told him not to do it. I told him it would destroy Margaret. But he said, and I quote, 'She was never really mine anyway.'" I stood up from the couch, blood roaring in my ears. Melissa grabbed my arm. "Don't, it's bait." But I couldn't look away. Daniel was smiling now, the grin of someone who had nothing left to lose. "Melissa, she's a sweetheart, always has been. I don't blame her, but Robert used her as a pawn, to get back at Margaret, to prove something, to feel powerful again." I snapped. I shut the laptop and walked to the door. Melissa followed. "Where are you going?" "To end this." We arrived at the rooftop 20 minutes later. The stream was still live. Daniel was basking in the attention like a snake in the sun. When I stepped onto the deck, cameras spun, phones raised, whispers spread like smoke. He spotted me instantly. "Well, well," he said, mic still clipped to his collar. "Speak of the devil." I walked straight to him. "Turn it off," I said. He grinned. "Why, you afraid of the truth?" "No," I said, "I'm tired of your lies." Melissa stepped beside me. Calm, steady, radiating the exact poise Margaret always pretended to have. "You know what I see," Daniel said to the camera. "A man who wrecked two sisters and still thinks he's the victim." I took the mic from his collar. The crowd gasped. I faced the camera. "You want the truth?" I glanced at Daniel, then at the viewers. Margaret broke off the engagement. She called it space, but it was a test. She wanted to see if I'd wait while she flirted with Daniel. Daniel's smirk faltered. "I didn't cheat. I didn't lie. I didn't run into Melissa's arms because I was angry. I ran because I was tired of loving someone who used people as props." Melissa reached for my hand, and I let her take it. "I married her because she's never lied to me. She's never weaponized my love. She never once made me feel small." Daniel laughed. "You're still deflecting, man. You never denied what I said." "You want a denial?" I stepped closer. "Fine. I never said Melissa was a pawn. I never said Margaret wasn't mine. But you know what? You did. You're the one who texted me the night before the proposal and said she wasn't worth it. You're the one who told me, after we broke up, that she only wanted me because she couldn't have you. Silence. The audience stopped typing. Daniel's face went pale. I pulled out my phone and held it up. I kept the messages. I never wanted to use them, but if you want war, here it is. I read aloud. She's a status chaser, bro. Always has been. You're the right guy on paper, but she keeps looking at me like I'm the prize. Marry her if you want, but don't be surprised when she ghosts you on your birthday again. The crowd gasped. I turned the phone screen to the camera. Time-stamped, archived, undeniable. Daniel staggered back. That was a joke. No, I said. That was the first honest thing you ever said. I dropped the mic on the table. Melissa and I walked out. The silence behind us was the loudest sound I'd ever heard. 3 hours later, Daniel issued an apology. It wasn't sincere. It didn't need to be. Because the damage was done, to him. Public sympathy snapped like a rubber band. Screenshots flooded the internet. Tweets changed tone. Wait, Daniel's the snake? He wanted Margaret the whole time. This man was projecting. Melissa and Robert deserved better from everyone. But none of it mattered. Not really. Because that night, I found Melissa sitting on the balcony. No phone, no laptop. Just her, curled in a blanket, eyes on the stars. I joined her quietly. You okay? I asked. She nodded. I didn't need the world to believe us. Just you. I kissed her temple. I always did, I whispered. She turned to me, voice trembling. I was scared you'd see me the way they did. I see you the way you are, and it's enough, more than enough. Tears slid down her cheeks, and she buried herself in my chest. That night, I didn't dream of Margaret. I didn't think of Daniel. I just held the woman who stood through every bullet, every betrayal, and still chose to stay. The woman I'd marry again, if I had the chance. No cameras, no revenge, no backstory, just us. And for the first time in months, I slept without guilt. Because the war wasn't over. But we had finally stopped bleeding. A month after the rooftop confrontation, the court case was dismissed. Margaret's legal team withdrew quietly, citing lack of merit. The media called it a mutual decision. But I knew better. Margaret didn't settle unless she had no cards left to play. Daniel had burned her final ace by trying to rewrite a story only she was allowed to narrate. And once his texts went viral, her foundation cracked. The pity narrative, shattered. The victim branding, discredited. Suddenly, people started looking twice. They remembered how Margaret had always controlled the camera angles, always edited the captions, always had a perfect story for every imperfection. Her followers didn't turn on her all at once, but slowly, like a tide pulling back. She deactivated her account a week later. Just disappeared. Melissa and I didn't celebrate, not loudly, not online. We sat in the same kitchen we'd painted ourselves, drinking tea, watching the world move on from a scandal that almost buried us. There was no announcement, no post, just quiet, earned peace. But some things still lingered. The grocery store glances, the whispers from people who recognized us but didn't know the truth, or didn't care. The comments online that never really disappeared. But the difference now? We had nothing to hide. And that was more powerful than any trending tag. One afternoon, I received a letter. No stamp, no return address, just slipped under the door. Melissa opened it while I was making coffee. She stood there for a long time, eyes scanning the paper without speaking. When I turned and asked what it was, she held it out wordlessly. It was from Margaret. I didn't lose, I let go. There's a difference. You were never meant to be mine forever. You were the story I needed to live through in order to finally stop writing fiction. Melissa, tell her I don't forgive her, but I understand her, and maybe that's worse. Take care of each other. But don't ever pretend I didn't matter. I did. You know I did. There was no threat, no bitterness. Just the last breath of a woman who knew the world didn't orbit her anymore. Melissa folded the letter and placed it inside a drawer. She never spoke about it again. But I knew it stayed with her. Not because she felt guilt, but because, despite everything, they were still sisters, and some fractures never fully close. 6 months passed. Our apartment became a home. We adopted a rescue dog named Theo who refused to sleep anywhere except between us. Melissa started painting again, not commissions, just for herself. I wrote again too, not public blog posts or editorials, just pages, thoughts, pieces of a past I was learning to let go. Then came the publisher's offer. One of the editors who followed the scandal reached out, said they were launching a new non-fiction series about public perception, betrayal, and the cost of digital warfare. They wanted our story. I said no at first. Melissa was still healing, so was I. But one night, she looked at me across the dinner table and said, "Write it, let them know what really happened, on your terms." So I did. I didn't paint Margaret as a monster. I didn't glorify myself. I told the truth, the messy, bleeding, uncomfortable truth, about what love looked like when it was used like currency, about how silence can be louder than betrayal, about how revenge isn't always fire, it's surviving longer than anyone expected. The book launched under the title, I Was Her Fiancée on paper, but her sister made me a husband in truth. It became a bestseller in 3 weeks. Margaret's name wasn't in it. Daniel's wasn't either, but everyone knew. And surprisingly, no lawsuits came. Instead, a second letter arrived. This time with a publisher's stamp. It was from Margaret again. Your version was kinder than mine would have been. I expected vengeance. What I got was honesty. So thank you. Don't send a copy, I already read it, twice. Tell Melissa she was braver than I ever was. This time, Melissa didn't put the letter in a drawer. She framed it. Hung it in the hallway beside a photo of us standing barefoot on the beach, wind in her hair, my arm around her waist, no ring in sight, but more married than we ever were in the courthouse. Because marriage, we'd learned, wasn't in the ceremony. It was in the aftermath. In how someone stays when the world walks out. In how someone fights with you, not against you. In how someone doesn't let a hashtag define your truth. 1 year after the wedding, we stood in front of a small gathering of 30 people, no cameras, no live stream, no press, just us, and the ones who saw us when no one else did. I took Melissa's hand and slid a ring on it again, this time with no rush, no noise, no second thoughts, and when she whispered, "Do you regret anything?" I smiled. Only that I didn't meet you first. Later that evening, as we danced under paper lanterns and moonlight, my phone buzzed. A message from a number I hadn't saved but recognized instantly. It was Daniel. "Congrats, looks like you won." I stared at it for a long moment, then typed back. "No one won, but I survived. That's more than you ever gave me credit for." I blocked the number and slid the phone into my pocket. As the music swelled and Melissa rested her head against my chest, I realized, this wasn't revenge, this was resurrection. This was what Margaret never understood. You don't ruin someone by leaving them. You ruin yourself when you underestimate what they'll become after you're gone. I had become someone stronger, someone freer, someone who knew exactly what love should feel like, because I'd spent years drowning in the version that wasn't. Melissa looked up at me and smiled. "What are you thinking?" I kissed her forehead. That nothing tastes sweeter than surviving the storm and still finding the sky. She laughed, the kind of laugh that healed things. And for the first time in years, I wasn't angry, I wasn't haunted, I wasn't even waiting for the next hit. I was exactly where I was meant to be. With the one person who didn't need me to be anyone but myself. That was the real revenge, the quiet kind, the lasting kind. The kind they never see coming.